when you turn on HGTV and you start watching those real estate shows, if they ever had a whole show that was dedicated on setting the right business goals, you'd probably be bored to tears and change right off of that to the Food Network or something else, right? And yet, one of the things that's really critical is, we just have to remember that this is a business, right? And as a business person, we've got to create the right business habits. And one of the habits that we've got to create is trying to figure out, what are we trying to achieve? And that's nothing more than goal setting, right? When we think about driving a car, we have GPSs. And we used to have these big clunky things that you throw up on the dashboard. And now we have these apps like Waze and things that run right in our phone. But the thing that works about a GPS is it's built on the idea that people have lived before us and they've left maps. And if we know where we're trying to get to and we know how to read a map, then what we can do is figure out a path to get there. But a GPS only works if you know where you're going to go. As good as it is, with all the technology that it has to have a precise destination in order to calculate the route, right? So if you were to go to your GPS and say, take me someplace where it's sunny, your GPS wouldn't really know how to answer that. But if you were to say, take me to San Diego, California, because it's a precise destination, then your GPS says, I know where that point is, and I know the maps. Let's figure out the best path to get there. And so when you're thinking about your business and how are you going to grow a successful real estate business, there's lots of different pathways to get to lots of different places. It starts with, where do you want to go, right? And I think a lot of times what happens is we're a little fuzzy about that in the beginning. What we focus on is just trying to learn how to do the tasks of being in this business, how to learn how to work with buyers and how to learn how to work with sellers and how to fill out contracts or whatever it is. And we kind of get good at doing stuff without any real direction in terms of where we're trying to go. And the truth is, if you don't have a destination, you're going to end up lost. And I don't want that to happen for you. So this module number 4, and again, it's early in the game in Ignite. It's really, how do you think about goals that matter? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to jump right in and start this. I trust that you can see the slideshow. If you cannot, let me know, but otherwise I'm just going to expect that you can. And let me just put the waiting room up here so that I can keep an eye on that as well. So we always begin Ignite with the fact that success leaves clues, and we know what successful agents do every day. And at some point you're probably going to get bored with this slide, but you're going to see it every time. Because what it does is it kind of gives the context in terms of how this topic fits in to what successful agents do every day. They focus on growing their business. They focus on running their business. And this notion of goal setting kind of comes into place in a couple of different areas. It's definitely ties in to lead generation for buyers and sellers, because depending on where we want our business to go to, we have to generate a different number of buyers and sellers, right? And that makes sense. But also on the run your business side, certainly setting goals and attending training and coaching are things that top agents do every day. And kudos to you, because by virtue of the fact that you're even in the Zoom room right now, you're getting the training that you need, and the coaching and setting goals is just a real important business aspect. So with that said, what we're going to talk about today is how to set meaningful goals, how to think about tying them back to really living a really good life. Because one of the things that you're going to hear us say again and again is the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life. There's no other reason to create a business other than to create profit so that you have the resources that's required to live a really good life. Now, there's a lot of other side benefits of running a business. You can run a business that makes an impact in the world, that provides services that change people's lives. And I think the best businesses do that. And I do include real estate in that. But the purpose of business is to kind of fund your life. So the question is, what do you want your life to look like? Right now, as a sidebar, you got an email from me this morning, I hope, that said that tomorrow at 1:00, from 1 until 3, I'm going to do a full 2-hour business planning clinic. And we're going to go through the specific models that we teach in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, the economic model, the lead generation model, the budget model, the organizational model. We're going to go through all of those things and really help you learn how to take your vision of where you're trying to get to in your life and bring it right back down into specific actions that will help you get there. We're going to do a detailed dive on that tomorrow at 1. I hope you can join us. But the question we're going to start with tomorrow is the same one that I'm going to start with today. If you woke up in the morning and overnight, like the magic fairies came and suddenly blessed you with sprinkled sort of magic fairy dust, and you woke up and your life was like the perfect life, what would it look like? You know, where would you be? What would you be doing? Who would be around you? Who wouldn't be around you? What would you be driving? What would you be eating? All those things, right? You know, you have to be able to see it if you're going to get there. Being able to visualize that is really critical. You know, back in the day when I was a psychotherapist before I got into real estate, you know, one of the things that happens sometimes is people get into a real funk, and the relationships get into a funk, and their life gets into a funk. And when you're in that space, it seems like the only thing that you can see with these blinders on is funk. It's things are bad. And when it feels like all you see is that things are bad, you don't even see the possibility of them getting better. And so sometimes one of the therapeutic tools that we asked people to think about was what we called the miracle question. If you woke up and there was a miracle and this problem that you're dealing with right now was gone, how would you know? What would be different? What could you see? What would be different in the relationships that you have and all that stuff? And it's the same kind of question here. What do you want your life to be? And once you think about that, I'd encourage you to invite the people that have a stake in that too. If you've got a partner in a marriage or in a relationship, those folks kind of have a voice in that. If you've got kids or parents or whatever, everybody doesn't have an equal voice, but everybody who's a stakeholder and trying to think about, what am I trying to do? What kind of life am I trying to create that includes these people? I'd encourage you to have those conversations, because here's what you do. You recognize that who we are and where we want to go determines what we do and what we accomplish. It's a quote from the book, The One Thing. You know, it sets the direction. Like I said before, like a GPS, if you don't have a specific direction that you're trying to get to or goals that you're trying to achieve, you're likely to be real busy and really not have much to show for it, right? So talk to folks and think about, you know what, if we had this perfect life, what would it look like? Because here's what happens. I want you to think big. I want you to dream big. And one of the things that I know is that a lot of times what we do, and not everybody does this, but a lot of times what we do is when we start out something new, we kind of temper our goals. We say, look, you know what, I'm new at this, and I know that it's going to take time. And so I don't want to set myself up for something that I can't achieve and disappoint myself and disappoint everyone else. I don't want to set a goal that's so big that I end up looking foolish. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set a small goal. And if I hit that small goal, then I'm going to ratchet it up and create a new goal and try to aim for that one. If I hit that one, I'm going to ratchet it up and aim for that one. And we do this sort of incremental step. And I think a lot of people do that. I can't tell you how many times when I talk to agents and I say, how much would it take to create the perfect life? And we're going to do some exercises around that in a minute. And they give me a number, but they say, that's not something that I can do. So this year, I'm just going to try to get for, you know, if I can do $25,000 in production this year of income this year, that's good. But then next year I want to do 50, and the year after that, 100. Well, here's the deal. The goals that we have dictate the route that we take. It's the same with your GPS. The destination you have in mind is going to determine what roads you go on. And if your small goals are going to dictate a path that looks like this, and your big goals are going to dictate a path that looks like this, what we know is that big goals generate bigger actions, and bigger actions get you to a different place, right? So the thing I want you to really think about is if you think about these boxes, right? At the very bottom, this is the box that's created from the trajectory of smaller actions. This is the box that's created by the trajectory of bigger actions, right? So the thing you want to think about is, how big is your box, right? What are you planning for? How important is it? And here's a really difficult question, but you have to think about it. What are you prepared to sacrifice in order to achieve what you want? Because the truth of the matter is, the pathway from where you are now to where you want to get to is a journey that's called doing something that you haven't done before. And doing things different require you to let go of certain things. They require you to stretch outside of your comfort zone. They require you to make some sacrifices. And the thing you got to think about is, how bad do I want this? Am I willing to do what it takes to make the changes in my life, to make the sacrifices of time, to make the sacrifices sometimes of how I schedule my time with my friends and family? Am I willing to do what it takes to achieve these goals? Because it looks really easy on TV. It looks really easy on HGTV. They go out, they meet a couple, they show them 3 houses, they buy the second one, and 2 months later, everybody's moved in, the house is completely redecorated, there's a client party, and everybody's in love with the agent, and it looks so much fun that you're like, wow, how hard could this really be? It's not hard, but if you think that you're going to get to a really good outcome without making some sacrifices, you're just deluding yourself. No one achieves anything in life of value without putting in the time and effort. So I'm dwelling on this a little bit here because I just want to drive this point home. It's not just how to set any goal. This module is, how do you set a goal that really matters? And if it matters, what are you willing to do to make it happen, right? So one of the things that you can do, and this would be an exercise, if we had more time, we'd really spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes on this. This is actually in the handout material for Ignite 2.0. If you go to the KW website and download the participant guide, this exercise is on page 3. And here's what I'd ask you to do. Think about 5 different boxes here. And in each box, I want you to think about a person or a cause that's important to you, right? A relationship that you have that's important to you, an issue that you have, perhaps there's a political issue or a nonprofit organization or something that matters to you. And then what I'd want you to do is just put the name of that person or organization inside each one of these boxes, 1 for each. And then I want you to go back again and think about that organization or that person and start to think about, what would I like to do to help that person? What would I like to do to support that organization? And how much money would it cost to do that? I'll give you a real practical example. When I first got into real estate in 2003, my daughter was younger and she was in 2nd grade, I believe. And one of the commitments that I had made to her was, I knew how hard it was to go to college. I grew up in a family that didn't really have any money to send me to college. And I was fortunate that I was able to go to college locally and commute, live at home and commute to school and work 3 or 4 different part-time jobs. I was a bartender. I was a music director for a church. I worked in the supermarket. I did a lot of different things to cobble together the money so I could go to school. And I know how hard that was to do. And so my commitment to my daughter was, if she can get in, I didn't want her to have to work that hard. I wanted her to be able to go to school and not have to take a student loan. And so what I had to think about was, how much is that going to cost? And let me tell you something. Those of you guys who have kids thinking about college or in college or through college or whatever, oh my God. It is the biggest bubble, I think, right now that has to pop. It is just unconscionable. I wouldn't have been able to do it today because even the schools that I went to, the state colleges, they're just too expensive. You can't even stay at home and work 3 or 4 part-time jobs and afford to do that anymore. It's got so out of control. But what I did do is I thought about my daughter and I said, if she wanted to go to 4-year school, how much would that cost? I came up with a number and I put it in the box. And then the next thing I thought about was, it was really important for me because I didn't grow up in a family with money. And I had a mom and dad who I really love, and they didn't have unlimited amounts of money. I wanted to make sure that there were enough resources that if in their golden days, if they needed something, there would be money for them. And so I thought about, how much would that cost? How much money would I have to bankroll to be able to kind of backstop mom and dad if there was a medical crisis or something like that? And I came up with a number. That's what I want this exercise to be for you, is think about these things. and think about how much money it would take to do those things, and put an organization name or a person name, put the activity of what you're going to do and how much money you need to do it, times 3, 4, 5, however many issues are important to you. And then in the middle, you just add up all those dollars and there's your financial goal. And we're going to do a deeper dive on this tomorrow. But here's an example again, right? In the handouts or in the slides, this is a person that wanted to donate $5,000 to the Cat Habitat for Austin Pet Alive, an organization they believed in. Sarah and Hunter must have been people that mattered to this person, and they wanted to get them through school debt free. It was going to cost them 120 grand. You just do that and you add it all up and you have a number, right? That's an exercise that I want you to do, because that number really helps start to think about the activities that it's going to take to make that happen. You know, we're going to think about $64,000. And then I got to remember that I don't get to keep all that money, right? That some of that money I got to share with my broker, and some of that money I got to pay for the taxes, and some of that money I got to have as operational overhead and just running my business. And so how much money do I have to put at the top of the funnel so that after all those other things are paid, I have the money that I want to do the things that I want to do? That's kind of the first step in this kind of goal setting, right? And so again, I want you to think about that. I'd love for you to go to page 3 of the participant guide for this module and do this exercise, and do it with the people that matter to you, and really think about what's it going to take. And recognize that even if you don't get there in the first year, I'm going to go back to this. How big is your box? If you have a really big goal, the actions and the steps that you're going to take to get on that path are going to be different than if you have a really small goal. And so don't dream small, and don't incrementally just think I'm going to do it and then I'll adjust up, because hitting that goal and adjusting upward, there's no momentum in that. You lose your momentum. And to get where you want to go, you got to build momentum in your business, right? Is this making sense? Is this resonating? I want to have somebody on mute for a second, or just in chat. You getting where we're going with this? Do you see why this would be important to think about?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, good. So we're going to move on in the interest of time. You know, understanding your goals. One of the things you got to think about, and I said you got to account for where does that money go. You don't get to keep it all, right? So if this is $1 of gross commission income in a transaction, well, who gets part of it? Well, right off the bat, that's going to get split with the other agent, right? If you're representing a buyer, unless you're what we call a dual agent, where you represent the buyer and the seller, which you can do in New Jersey with certain permission, you're going to have to give half of that commission dollar to the other agent. And then some of that commission is going to go to your market center, right? You're on a 70-30 split, so they're going to get 30%. There's a 6% royalty, or money that goes to Keller Williams International on every transaction. The beauty of our model is that there's a limit to how much you're ever going to give in the course of a year. We call that a cap. The royalty, the 6%, which goes to Keller Williams International, which pays for all the different things that you get as a benefit of being in a franchise group. Everyone who's using Command and all that technology development is being paid for by the 6% royalty fees on the business being done by agents. But that caps out to only $3,000 per agent per year. You'll never pay more than $3,000 to Keller Williams International over the course of a year. And then the 70-30 split caps out at different numbers. What do I mean by different numbers? Well, the cap, the split with the office is really depending on the office that you're in. Because when we set that cap, we set it as a relationship to how much money could you make doing business in this market. So if you're in a very high-priced market, that cap is going to be higher. In Bergen County, in our franchise group, most of our offices have that cap set at $37,000. However, Rutherford is set at $32,000. And why would that be? Well, because of when you look at the price point of the properties that are typically served in those areas, you know, the price point in the Rutherford market's just a little bit lower on average than the price point in the Ridgewood market. And so those caps are different. If you go to Jersey City, the cap is probably going to be closer to $45,000 or $50,000. If you go to Keller Williams in Manhattan, the cap, I believe, is almost $60,000. If you go to Keller Williams in Shreveport, Louisiana, the cap's probably going to be closer to $25,000. But you're going to be giving money to the broker. It's part of what, it's part of the what we do to be able to provide the services for you. So you've got some of that money that goes there, right? Some of that money goes to taxes. And at the end of the day, you only get to fund your life with the profit after expenses. So build your plan accordingly, right? Make sure you're getting enough at the top end to make that happen. And again, in the interest of time, I'm going to show you these slides. These slides show price points that aren't accurate for our market. I probably should have come back in and adjusted these, because once you know how much gross commission income, GCI, gross commission income, and that's the dollar before it gets shared with anybody. When you go to a closing and you get a check that you bring back to the office and you give it to your MCA for processing, that total check is what we call gross commission income. It's the total amount before anybody touches it. And then the market center takes theirs, the franchise takes theirs, et cetera. But when you go back to your goal, one of the things that you got to figure out is, how much money do I get in gross commission on my average sale? And that's different for each agent, because different agents kind of do different kinds of business. If you're doing luxury business, your average price point could be well over $1 million. And the commission on $1 million sale is going to be very different than a commission on a $300,000 sale. What you need to do for your business is start to think about, where am I doing my business? What is the average price of the business that I do? And when I do that, what's the average gross commission check per transaction? And there's a little bit of math. And again, we'll do a much deeper dive on this tomorrow. I don't want to spend tons and tons of times here, but you get the idea. And just to make the numbers really, really easy, if I have a $400,000 sale, and if the average commission is 2.5% on the transaction side, meaning if I represent a buyer, I get 2.5%. Then a $400,000 sale at 2.5% is a $10,000 commission. And if I did that exercise and I thought about how much money I needed to generate to fund the life the way that I needed to, and let's just arbitrarily say I needed $200,000 to do that. If I get 10,000 of those dollars with every closing, then I divide 200 by 10, and it tells me I got to build a path to 20 closings a year, right? Because if I can find a way to get 20 closings a year to occur, I'm going to be fine, right? But that's why we've got to think about what's your average price and what's your average commission. There is a place on your Keller Williams intranet site, the one where you log in and you see your picture in the upper left corner, and right next to your picture, there's a little button that says reports. If you click on reports, there is a report that's in there that's called a multi-year trend report, multi-year trend. And what that does is it keeps track of all the closings that you have year over year over year. And it starts to calculate things like, what is your average sale price? What is your average commission? And it's a useful tool as you start to do more business, just to keep track of that, because then it helps you really refine this goal setting. And if anybody isn't familiar with where to see that and you want to know how to do that, just jump in with me on an office hour. I do those 3 times a week, and I'll share the screen and we'll go into that. Now, we touched on all this math before. I don't want to get too caught up in it again in terms of how much goes to the franchise, how much of it goes to international. But at the end of the day, this is what we need to think about, right? We need to think about, what is my net goal? How much profit do I need? The center box in that example a couple slides back, where I've got 5 things that I want to fund. How much do I need in total? And then I got to add back in all these other expenses. How much do I have to give to Keller Williams when my royalty, it's going to be $3,000 a year? How much do I have to give to my split cap, which is probably going to be $37,000 a year in most of our offices? You add those 2 together, and then I need to put 40 in here. Again, I probably should have tweaked these slides, because these just some general numbers. But that would change this to 40, 37 being the company dollar in the office, 3,000 being the royalty cap. How much are my business expenses every year? And you're going to need to track your numbers and figure out, how much overhead do I have? How much do I have to pay for my board dues and my MLS dues? And how much do I pay the market center every month? and how much does it cost me for E&O, and how much does it cost to buy signs and do marketing and all that stuff, and you got to add that in. When you add this all up, it gives you your total gross commission target. Then you divide it by the average per transaction to get the total number of transactions that you need. That's the math. And again, I'm going to record this. I'm going to post it up on the YouTube channel later on this afternoon. So if you want to, I know that math is something that when you hear these numbers, maybe for the first time, you want to go back and review them to make sure you've got them right. Go back and watch this again. Now, we do have the ability in Command to do some goal setting. And I encourage you to do that. I'm not going to actually log out of this and log into Command right now. In fact, you know what? Maybe I will. I'm gonna live on the edge. Let's do it. I want to get into Command so you can see exactly where to find this. In order to do that, I've got to get out of this screen though. So give me a moment, because that's always tricky to do when you're, there we go. I'm going to get to my KW Command. I had that open in a recent class and I just left it up. Do you guys see my Command account? So you just unmute and tell me whether you see that.
Yes, I do.
All right, cool. What you're going to do, and I like this little red bar here in the upper left corner, the red KW, you click on this and it opens up all the menus so you can see what's what. And so where would the goals be? It would be in this area called reports. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on reports and you let it feed. And see on this menu across the top, it says goals. Here's where you're going to click on it. And what it's going to actually allow you to do is to put in what are your goals. You're going to set your goals for 2020. And in a few more months, you're going to be able to set some preliminary goals for 2021. And when you click on this goal setting button, it's going to open up a menu where it asks you to start to think about where are you trying to get to. And I'm not going to walk through the whole thing right now. You can see some videos on this on KW Command. You'll see some videos on this on YouTube. But you see how it opens up these questions and it says, what's the year that you're setting goals for? What's the annual profit goal? And remember, what we're trying to figure out is how much has got to come out of the bottom of the machine here, right? Because I can only take care of the things that matter to me and pay for those with profit. I can't pay for those with money that's allocated to someone else. So what's my profit goal? And then you add in your expenses and you add in what we call cost of sale. And if you click on this little info button, what it will tell you is that cost of sale includes what you pay the broker in your split, $37,000 over the course of a year. And what do you pay the franchise in their cap? $3,000 per year. And so you go in and you change that number. And actually, I was doing this exercise with a market center that's not in our group recently. I do some coaching for some other offices, and their cap was $37,500. It's just a smidge higher than ours is. So that's why this says $40,005 to add those two numbers together. It goes through kind of the makeup of what percentage of your business is buyers, what percentage of your business is sellers. Again, do a deep dive on that with me tomorrow. What's your average listing price, your average buyer price, et cetera. And what Command then gets to do for you is it makes some calculations. It will walk through some conversions here, which are useful to think about. How many people do I need to talk to get somebody to meet with me? How many meetings do I need to have to get somebody to choose to list with me? How many listings do I need to take to get one that goes under contract? How many contracts do I need to get one that goes all the way to the closing table? How many closings do I need to fund the life that I want? And Command will help start to do some basic calculations. And when you have all that done, and you click Save and Continue, it takes you to a page when we go back to our goals. In fact, let me go right on back to our goals here. And it tells us, right? It tells us, it says here's what you need to know. In order to get to where you want to be with the profit that you said that you want to generate, you're going to need to have you're going to need to have $100,000. You're going to need to get $176,500 of total income at the top of the funnel. And we estimate that that's going to require you to have a database that has 256 people in it, and that and it just kind of spells it out for you, right? Command is a really good tool. Again, this is not a command class. We're not going to go through all the details here, but when you know where you want to get, leverage command and learn how to figure out the right mix, so you'll know how much you need to get in the top of the funnel. Any questions around that? We're moving quicker on this. I get that, because we have some other things that I want to make sure we get to in this module. But please, please, please set your goals in command and learn how to do that. If you don't know how to do that, jump on an office hour with me. We'll do it together. We'll do a deeper dive on that tomorrow from 1 until 3, but learn how to do it, right? Because then when you log in, are we back to the PowerPoint? Do you guys see that again? Somebody just tell me if you can or you can't.
I don't see anything.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure that we're on the right page. So I want to get back into the right screen share here.
I'm sorry, and you keep saying tomorrow. Are you meaning tomorrow or Friday's class?
No, I mean tomorrow. On Thursday from 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock, I'm doing a business planning session for 2 hours from 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock. You should hopefully have gotten an email about that from me earlier today. If you did not, that means that I don't have your email in my system yet. Perhaps you're newer to the Market Center and I don't have it. But you will get it. That will be 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday. And if you don't have the link for that and you want it, just reach out to me a little bit after this class today. I'll send it to you.
Awesome. And yeah, we can see the screen now.
Okay, cool. So here's the beauty. Once you've got those numbers into your command account, what happens is when you log in, it just kind of tells you where are you in relationship to it. You know, this month, if my goal of profit is 100,000, this month I got to figure out how to make 8,300. It just keeps you on track, right? It's like having a GPS. What I love about a GPS is you know where you're going to go. It knows what the route is. And the most important thing is it tracks where you are, because they've got 3 different satellites that are tracking into your GPS so that it knows in relationship to the map, where are you? And if you get off track, what does your GPS do? It tells you something, right? What does it say? Well, here's what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, oh God, Hal, come on, man. How did you miss that freaking turn, you idiot? I mean, for 2 miles, I was telling you to get to the right lane, and you just totally blew me off. It doesn't have any judgment. Now, if I was a programmer, it might be fun to program it to say something like that. But what it simply says is, hey, you said you wanted to go here. You're starting to go here. If you really do want to go where you said you want to go, what it says is it recalculates. It says, look, I'm going to give you have to go a different route now. You got to change your direction. And the beauty of having your goals in command is as you're doing business, as you're closing business every month, it gets updated. How far along the journey are you? Do you need to speed up? Do you need to go a different route? It will give you some of the critical feedback that you need to help you stay on track to the all-important place, which is funding the life that you want, right? So first part of this, think about these goals. Think about what's important to you and why. Use command to figure out how much money do you have to create to make that all come together. And that's great to have a plan, but it ain't great if you don't execute. If you don't know what to do to make it happen. It's great to say I need to make $150,000 of gross commission income. What the hell am I going to do to make that happen, dummy? Well, that's where you got to kind of really start to think about, okay, let's think about the activities then. And there's a couple of things we have to think about. One is there's this idea that we call the 80-20 rule. And we've talked about it in other classes if you've been around KW for a while. Is anybody familiar with this concept, the 80-20 rule? Sometimes we refer to it as the Pareto principle. Sometimes we refer to it as the law of the vital few. There's a lot of ways that we think about this idea. But who could unmute or maybe put in chat what your understanding is of what the 80-20 rule tells us? Well, by the absence of response, my suspicion is that you're either in a noisy place and you don't want to unmute, or you're not 100% sure. So let me explain it real quick. Not everything matters the same. Certain things that you're going to do are going to have a whole lot of impact in the outcomes that you achieve, and certain things that you do really aren't going to do that much. The 80-20 rule is sort of created by, the concept was probably first uncovered by an Italian economist named Pareto. Sometimes that's why we call this the Pareto principle. And when he was studying the Italian economy back in the 1800s, what he determined was that 80% of all the wealth in the country, 80% of the resources were controlled by 20% of the people. And the cool thing was, Pareto was also a gardener. And one of the things that he noticed was that 20% of the pea pods generated 80% of the peas. And he just started to notice that this relationship between 80-20 just seems to come up again and again and again in the universe. And it starts to be something that you can rely on. It's predictable. And when it comes to performance, what we know is 80% of the outcome that you get is generated by 20% of what you did. Whereas 20% of what you get is generated by 80% of what you spend your time doing. That should be a wake-up call. And here's the challenge that we have. Human beings are hardwired to pay attention to things that are urgent in the moment, that are screaming the loudest, but not necessarily the most important thing. You know, most of the time in our lives, the most important thing, we know what it is, but we don't always do it because something in the moment seems more important. I know that it's more important for me to eat healthy and to exercise. I know that's the important thing. And yet in the moment, the thing that's screaming the loudest is that piece of carrot cake. And you know what? I have a hard time delaying my gratification for a healthier life when that carrot cake is screaming at me. To make it even more real from a business standpoint, a lot of us since March have been home. And we're starting to get back into the workplaces again with this, you know, things are opening up again with this pandemic. But how many of you were at home with your kids, trying to educate your kids, trying to be a teacher, which perhaps you were never trained to do, and run your business at the same time? And so
Me.
Yeah. Then stand up and take a bow, my friend, because that's freaking hard. And what happens is, you know that the most important thing for your business is to generate leads and to talk to clients and to do the business work. And yet the thing that's screaming the loudest is 8 years old and says, "Mommy, I don't understand how to do this. Can you help me?" And the thing in the moment that gets your attention is the homework. And it's important. It's important. That's why we do it. But it doesn't move our business. And earlier, some of us at 10 o'clock were having a conversation with, how do I put these bunkers around my day? Because my friends want to interrupt me and they want to text me and they want to Instagram me and all these things. And I'm trying to work here. And how do I do that? Well, the point of the 80-20 principle is we have to be purposeful about what are the activities that are going to create our business. And what are the activities that I could do them, but they're probably not as important. And to really get clear about that, certain things that you're going to do are going to generate more business for you than other things, right? And so, for example, I found for myself that one of the most leveraged ways for me to get into a relationship with buyers and sellers, one of the core tasks of being an agent, was to conduct open houses and networking events. What I learned about myself and my business was, if I could meet you face-to-face in an open house or a networking event, I had a better chance of building the kind of a relationship where I could I could get you into my database, I could stay in touch with you over time and convert you into a real business transaction. Whereas other things that I did, perhaps some of the marketing activities, perhaps some other lead generation activities, I was never one to do much with cold calling. I just didn't convert really well with cold calling. And so I could spend all day cold calling and not generate nearly as much opportunity as if I spent part of the day hosting an open house. That's kind of the 80-20 rule in practice. You start to think about what are the things that are going to move the ball and what are the things that are not going to move the ball, and you spend more time doing the things that matter. And if you took a look at this 20% of things that really have the most impact, you could narrow that down and say, of this whole group of activities, what's the 20% that has the most influence of that group? That's kind of we call that kind of going hyper Pareto, right? It's what's the 20% of the 20%. And you can drill it all the way down to the question from the book, The One Thing, that Gary Keller wrote with Jay Papasan back in 2000 and whatever it was, where he calls it the focusing question. And what the focusing question simply says is this: what's the one thing that you can do right now such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary? It's kind of taken Pareto all the way down to its very, very essence. It's what's the 20% that's going to have the most impact, and what's the 20% of that, and what's the 20% of that. And ultimately, if we unpack this question, what's the one thing that I can do, right? Not what's the one thing that somebody who's got more talent than me can do. Not what's the one thing that somebody who's smarter than me and has unlimited resources of technology can do, because they can do different things than I can do. But what's the one thing that I can do? I know how to do it. I'm willing to do it. I'm capable of doing it, such that by doing it, everything else is easier. It's not perfect yet. It's not world-class yet, but I've moved the ball forward, right? What's the one thing that I can do to move the ball forward? And if I do that thing and I keep moving the ball forward, I'm going to have success. I remember years ago an interview between a guy named Ken Blanchard, who is a business author. Some of you may know of him. He's written a lot of business books, but one of them, probably his most famous, is called The 10-Minute Manager, or The 1-Minute Manager, actually. Anyway, he had an interview with a guy who happened to be an NFL quarterback. He was a quarterback for the Denver Broncos by the name of John Elway. And the conversation was, what's the difference between quarterbacks who win and quarterbacks who seem talented, but they don't just seem to win? And to some degree, it depends on what team you're on and the talent around you. But Elway's answer was an interesting one. And what he said was, when you get to the NFL, if you're talented enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, you are the elite of the elite. And so it's not skill so much anymore. And yes, John Elway was an elite quarterback. And there are some quarterbacks that are not as talented. I get that. However, if you're talented enough to be on the field in the NFL, you've got good arm strength. You've got good footwork. What he says is the quarterbacks that win are the ones who are better at making the decision of where they can make a play. And he went on to say that in every set of downs, when they get the ball, they go to the line of scrimmage and they have 2 or 3 different plays in mind. And the plan of action is, I'm going to get the ball. I'm going to throw the ball to this guy. But if I think he's covered and I can't get the ball to him, then I'm going to have another guy in mind. I'm going to take a look and see if I can get the ball to him. If I can't get the ball to him, I may have to keep it myself. But they don't have just one option. And what Elway said, which was so powerful to me at least, was the quarterbacks that win are the ones that make the decision the fastest as to where they can move the ball and complete a play. Because if you constantly move the ball forward, you're going to score. The ones who don't make the decision quickly enough don't move the ball forward, and they have to give the ball back to the other team. And from a business standpoint, it really comes to this. What's the one thing that I can do? I'm not the best at everything yet. I haven't mastered all the skills yet. But what do I know how to do? And if I do that one thing, I can just move the ball and just keep doing it. And time on task over time, I get better and better and better and better. And I'm going to move the ball and I'm going to win, right? It's the way I want you to think about this. And again, if you're newer to the real estate business, you're going to have to learn different skills than you've learned before. But here's the most important thing. Even if you're new to real estate, you're not new to the planet, hopefully. And if you're not new to the planet, you've already mastered certain things in life. So much of what real estate is, it's about influencing people. Real estate and sales in general is influence, right? We influence people to make decisions. We influence people to get into action based on those decisions. And it's a communication skill largely. And at this point in our lives, we've learned some things about how do we connect with people in a way that causes them to begin to like us and trust us in a way that allows them to be influenced by me. And at this point in our lives, we have some ideas about how we do that different than other people do that. And that's what we're talking about. That's where you start. You start with the thing that you've already mastered. You start with the thing that you've already learned how to do competently. And then you add the real estate specific things on top of it. There's a saying that I love that says, the magic always happens outside of your comfort zone. A friend of mine gave me a coffee mug one time that said that. And I think there's some truth in that, right? The real big magic in life doesn't happen if you're going to play safe. We go back to that vision a couple slides ago as to how big is your dream? You know, I heard someone say recently that if your goals aren't big enough to make you cry, then you're not dreaming big enough. I've also heard it said that if people aren't laughing at you when you tell them what your goals are, then you're just not dreaming big enough. You should be dreaming so big that people are like, are you freaking crazy? That's the kind of a dream that generates those big actions, right? But what I know is that I'm never going to get to the magic if I don't dream big and I don't get outside of my comfort zone. However, there's another piece of truth in this, that while the magic never happens unless you get outside of your comfort zone, the magic will never happen if you get outside of your competence. Because only in areas where you have competence will you be able to execute well enough to make the magic happen, right? And so what does all this have to do with anything? As you're growing your business, you're going to start with this level of competence, which is not super big yet. And here's the 4 levels of adult learning and adult growth. Just understand that this is the path. You begin as an adult learner. It's different with kids, but with adults, we start out with this area that we call being unconsciously incompetent. And what that means is I don't even know what I don't know yet, right? It's like, I don't know what's possible. And once you get a little bit of learning, what happens is you move from being unconsciously incompetent, you learn some things, and what you become consciously incompetent. You recognize that you don't know enough, and you're conscious of that. And for most adults, that is really terrifying because we don't like that spot. We don't like to feel incompetent. We like to look good. We like to be right. We like to kind of don't take actions that make ourselves look foolish. You know, it's really different with kids. And part of the difference is because kids, the part of the brain that creates that self-criticism, that judgment is a part of the brain that doesn't even develop until you're older. And so it's funny, if I went into a room of kindergarten kids and I said to you guys, how many of you kids can draw? Every single room would rise. Every single hand in the room would go to the ceiling. And some of those kids would be squiggling around in their chair. They're so excited because they can't wait to show me how they draw. If I opened up this Zoom class with everyone in this group and said, how many of you guys can draw? I suspect that there might be a couple of you that feel confident in that and say, yeah, I can. And I do a really good job. But most of us would hear that question as, how many of you can draw well? And then you think about it and you judge it and you're like, nah, I don't really draw that well. And so you don't raise your hand. That's conscious incompetence. And then what happens is as you start to develop some skills, you become consciously competent. You begin to learn how to do things and you kind of have to pay attention step by step. You kind of have to review it again and again and maybe have a checklist or a guide or a mentor who can kind of model for you. But if I pay attention and I think about it, it's kind of like driving. When I first get my driver's license, I have to be really careful and think about what am I doing? I'm looking at the mirrors. How fast am I going? I got to take a look at the speedometer and all those things. Now, you've sort of done it so much that you move from conscious competence to unconscious competence. You don't even think about it anymore. You get in the car, you turn it on, you're singing a song, you're drinking a glass of water, a cup of water, you're doing the whole thing. You get to where you go, you're not even thinking about the trip anymore. And yet you still drove safely because you were unconsciously competent. The pathway here is think about your big goals, and then we've got to think about what activities am I going to take that are going to get me there? What do I know how to do now? I'm going to start with those. What do I need to learn how to do? I'm going to learn that next and start to put that path together, right? We know successful agents, they do certain things. They work on their business. They grow their business. We recognize that being learning-based is the cornerstone of your action plan. There is so much to learn to become a world-class professional. You can't learn it all in one shot. Learn the right next step. You know, it's you got to learn how to crawl before you learn how to stand, and you got to learn how to stand before you learn how to walk, and you have to learn how to walk before you learn how to run. Don't try to learn how to run from a kneeling position, right? What's the next thing I do need to learn? So with that said, it's really going to be about lead generation. And again, tomorrow, we're going to do a deeper dive in how do you prioritize those activities, right? There's a tool that I'm going to share with you tomorrow that we call not the 411, that's this one. And I get to this in a second. And we do have a hard stop at 12 o'clock today. I can't go over it because I have a meeting at 12 noon that I have to be on with Al Donahue and the leadership group. So I am going to do a hard stop. Again, we're going to follow up on a lot of this in more detail tomorrow. But once you determine where you want to go and you determine how many transactions it's going to take, now what we have to think about is, what do I know how to do from a lead generation and a marketing standpoint, and how do I focus those activities into a couple of core priorities? Why is prioritization important? Well, it brings focus. If you just start to randomly do stuff without any real plan of what are you doing and why, you'll never build momentum. I like to think about the image of a big commercial airliner. Not so sure I want to get on one today, at least yet, because I really do want to get on one. I want to travel so bad. But right now, the thing with the commercial airliners, those things are heavy. And they're really heavy. And when you put people on them and fuel on them and luggage on them, they get heavier still. And yet they can get that commercial airliner off the ground into the air. How do they do it? Well, I'm not going to try to get into all the mechanics of flight because I don't really understand it well enough to explain it, but I know this much. The basic formula is I need to generate enough forward momentum so that I can get enough lift under the wings to lift all of that weight off of the ground and get it airborne. And the heavier the plane, the more energy it takes to create that kind of momentum. If I'm just flying a little ultralight, if I'm just flying a little Cessna, that's not that heavy. You could put a single propeller on that plane and create enough forward momentum to get enough lift under those wings to get that thing up in the air. But a heavy commercial airliner, you could not put enough propellers on that airplane to generate enough energy to move that forward. You have to focus that energy into the thrust of a jet engine. And focused energy is what creates the momentum that's necessary to lift a heavy object. And right now, when you're starting out in your real estate business is at a dead stop. It's a heavy object. And so I can't just be throwing stuff out there against the wall. I can't just be putting a propeller here and putting a propeller here. I've got to focus my activities into a couple key jet engines. One of them is probably going to be your database. The last topic we just talked about the other day was your database is your business. How do you specifically, what activities are you going to do to ensure that your database engine is running and it's growing and it's building and you're nurturing it and it's generating leads for you? For most people, second priority would probably be having a geographic base to your business. Where am I going to do my business? Because I can't be an expert of everything. I can't master everything. I can't learn all the inventory in the state. I probably am going to have to figure out where am I going to focus and what combination of marketing and prospecting activities are going to help me to do business and get known in that geographic footprint. And that becomes sort of the second priority, the second jet engine, if you will. And then when you think about that, you say, okay, these are the two things I'm going to focus on. What am I going to do? What do I know how to do already? What do I need to learn how to do? And Ignite will help you with that. We're going to get through all of this in terms of what to do, but go to your offices and talk to your coaches and your mentors and people like that and start to think it's a combination of marketing and prospecting. Well, what does that look like? Marketing is advertising. What do I do? Where would I advertise? Who would I try to reach? Prospecting is reaching out and touching folks and talking to folks. Am I going to do that through open houses, through telephone calls? How am I going to do it? We put all of these activities together and then we execute them. And this tool that we call the 411 says, if we break down our big vision goals of the future to shorter little snippets, what do I need to accomplish this year in order to get to my someday goal? What do I need to accomplish this month in order to get to my annual goal? What do I have to get done this week in order to be on track to hit my monthly goal? What do I have to do today in order to be on track to hit my weekly goal? What do I have to do right now in order to be on track to hit today's goal? it's kind of what we call goal setting to the now. The tool is what we call a 411. I've got one big annual goal. I'm going to think about what's my monthly goal that I need to accomplish in order to stay on track. I've got 4 weeks in the month. What are my weekly goals? And we just kind of keep chipping it down and chipping it down and chipping it down and bringing absolute clarity and focus into what should I be doing. And it all starts with knowing where you want to go. Setting big goals that matter is all about thinking about the life that you want to create, the dreams that you want to leave, the legacies that you want to leave, and deciding on what the dollar figure is that's necessary to make that real, because we live in a world where it takes money to do stuff. And I'm not going to have a judgment about money in terms of good or bad. It's neither of those. It's what do you do with the money that matters, right? But when you have a big dream and a big goal and you know how much it takes to fund, then you can go back and start to think about how do I execute it, doing it in this manner. So that said, it is 11:58. I have a hard stop in about 90 seconds. Just give me somebody unmute. Give me a couple of ahas. Again, this moved really quick. This will be recorded. It'll be up on the Bergen County Partners YouTube channel later today. But tomorrow at 1, much deeper dive, 2-hour dive on this, right? But give me some ahas. Anything today that pops out at you. You know I'm going to ask you for ahas, so please be ready. 1 or 2 people, just a little nugget that popped out to you today that's something that you're thinking about, or a little light bulb that went off.